Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Streetwise Radio. My illustrious guest tonight is the talented and intellectual Victor Goines. He's a saxophonist supreme and a member of the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, led by Wynton Marsalis. They are here in San Francisco, blessing us with a series of great shows through the 31st. Welcome, Victor.
Hello. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And now, do you have a Grammy or a Pulitzer like the maestro?
No, I have none of those to my credit.
Not yet.
Not yet. Still a work in
Not yet.
progress.
Still working on it. Okay, right. Streetwise Radio loves that. Okay, and welcome back to San Francisco. How does it feel to be back?
It's great to be back. It's been a long time. Usually we're across the water in Oakland or either Berkeley, but San Francisco is a great town, so it's good to be here.
Mhm. What's it like working at SF Jazz?
It's fun, it's kind of like coming back, you seeing your relatives you haven't seen in a long time, thus that generated the baseball game we had yesterday. But it's been good to be back and to be in a facility and be with the people who are running the facility, and we obviously are great friends with the ensemble, the collective. So
Uh,
it's great to be with our extended family.
okay, and a shout out to Randall Klein, who was so nice to us last night. The director of SF Jazz, Randall Klein. You are a prince. He was so
Absolutely,
sensitive. It's
absolutely.
nice. So, how did you end up? We're going to deviate for a while. It's a sports town. The Niners are in trending right now. So, how did you end up playing baseball
Well,
of
we,
all things?
we whenever we can, we try to get a good game going. And years ago, I'm told it's been 5 years ago that we had played some. Well, it seemed like it's more than five. 2005, they said, so 15 years ago. And we were here. We were able to generate a game, and we played against SF Jazz, and we were victorious in our feat. So the collective didn't necessarily like that and didn't embrace it because they weren't in town at the time. So they wanted to have another game. So we were supposed to play the night of the gala, but the COVID situation, everything didn't allow that to happen, and the gala was canceled for SF Jazz, unfortunately. So the collective once again wasn't in town, but the game went on nonetheless. So, but we had a good time. It's a like you said, a sports town, a very competitive town.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
but but Jazz at Lincoln Center was victorious again.
That's so great. So, tell us about your background. How long have you been playing with Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra?
Yeah, I've been with the orchestra for going on 28 years now. Yeah,
Wow.
it's been a
I
long time.
remember I remember I met you on the In This House on This Morning tour.
Wow, that was 1994, maybe.
Oh wow, oh
Wow.
my.
1994, yeah.
Wow.
Long time.
Yes, yes, yes. So what's the secret to staying in an orchestra for 28 years?
I don't think there's really any secrets, They all are really very, very obvious. One is to be present at the moment at all times.
Hmm.
So always trying to get better and put your skills at the highest level, and learning how to exist inside of an ensemble. It's one thing to really acquire a job. It's another thing to be able to sustain a job for a long period of time and to keep it fresh. I mean, well, Jazz on Lincoln Center, Wynton is very, very active about the freshness of it because we've done so many different things. So for me, it's just a matter of making sure that my skills are up to par to be able to articulate what it is that we're trying to do, whether it's musically or educationally or any aspect of how I'm involved inside of the works of Jazz at Lincoln Center.
And for those who don't know, Victor has the most exquisite tone on the sax. I
Uh,
mean, when he plays these riffs, the riffs, you could just see spirals, and then your mind goes to other places. When I saw the In This House concert, I was so blown away. I'm, oh wow, this is amazing. This man's mind must be an oasis because this beauty that he's creating. And when I listened to the album, I all I would hear would be the sax
well,
parts.
thank you
Yeah,
very much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Which brings us to tell us how about growing up in New Orleans and how you came to discover the beloved instrument, the sax.
Well, I started on the clarinet, and it wasn't because I went into it saying, "Oh, I want to be a musician." I wanted to be a baseball player at one point, but
Oh,
I'm
wow.
also asthmatic. So my
Oh,
mom thought that if I played a wind instrument, it would help me with my breathing challenges. And lo and behold, it did. But I also gravitated toward it. I was I was able to excel at it among my peers and kind of rise to the top of the ensembles that I was involved in and developed a love for it. So it just became part of my daily activities of everything I did. I did all of the things I wanted to do. I played sports, I played music. If I wanted to do it, I did it. Nobody ever held me back from doing it. And being from New Orleans, though, as a teenager in music was really, really fantastic because I grew up at a time when the musicians of the city, my elders, the generation of Ellis Marsalis and all of them, were quite embracing of me to be around and check out what was going on. I was fortunate with, as it pertains to Ellis Marsalis, to have gone to kindergarten with Wynton, so that's how we got to really know each other. And then I went to an all boys high school that had a respected music department, St. Augustine High School. So my clarinet teacher there was he was on the scene playing, and so many people that were active on the scene playing, I was able to develop relationships with them as a teenager. So I got experiences and education from everyone, both um, how can you say it, inside of institutions that of higher learning, but also on the institutions like you say. Tell me the name of your radio show again. Is
Streetwise Radio.
And I was Streetwise because I was out there. I was
Yeah,
checking out everybody, George French and Jermaine Basil, and at Tyler's Beer Garden at Snug Harbor. If there was music there, I was there. I was out there getting Streetwise and checking it out and becoming informed about the music.
that's great. That's great. And what I barely missed you at Snug Harbor. I was leaving New Orleans as you were
Oh,
entering Snug Harbor. I said,
okay.
"Oh, I wish I could stay long enough to see Victor." Yeah. And so, can you give us a few words on the legacy of Ellis Marsalis? I remember I was working briefly for the summer in his household,
Hmm.
and I was blessed to be in the midst of making history because my whole life I've idolized the Marsalis family. They represented Black excellence to me. And you were considered sophisticated if you were Black and understood jazz. So I went on a quest to learn I could about jazz, and I read about the family. And through shows like In This House, I got to know Wynton and Branford and Delphio, and actually to get a few more much insight on the legacy. So, and then I got to work with Ellis himself. So I had collected some pictures from your tours here in San Francisco. I
Hmm.
gave him a stack, and the only person that he pointed out, Victor Goines.
Well, I spent
And
a
he
lot
had
of time with him. A lot of
the,
time. A few words in Ellis Marsalis are kind of like oxymorons because to talk about him and only have a few words is an impossibility. And if you had a chance to ask him questions and expected only a few words, that was going to be your ignorance about it because he was going to give you a very thorough response about whatever
no,
the topic was. And it was always going to be to point, but it was going to be as complete as possible. Um, he was the kind of person who required us all, not only inspired us all, but required us all to be thinkers. If you asked a question or if you made a statement to him or something like, "They told me to do this," he would say, "Who are they?"
mhm,
He wanted to know
yeah,
who they was that was going to influence you enough to make you go that route without you doing the kind of research or understanding about what it is that you want to do on your own. He was just a phenomenal teacher. But for me, I don't know how close he was to others. He was a great friend. Um, I I talked to him shortly before his passing, and I saw him the last night he played in New Orleans at Snug Harbor. I happened to be in town December of 2019, and as I always do when I'm in town and he's playing, I usually didn't go out to go check out many other people when I'm in New Orleans, but I always went to check out Ellis Marsalis. So I was at the club, I had my horn, and I never, ever got on his bandstand without his invitation or
I heard
permission,
that.
ever. Not that it
Wow.
wasn't going to be forgiven if I did, but I never did. But as they were going on the bandstand and the MC was announcing at night, they mentioned, well, this is going to be his final gig at Snug Harbor. And
Mm.
usually I would play just a little while with him, but I was like, this is going to be his final gig. I want to get as much as I can.
Wow.
So I as they started the first tune, 12 Zit, I walked on the bandstand and I had my antenna in my hand, stood behind him. I said, hey man, I apologize for not waiting for you to call me up, but if this is gonna be your last chance to play here at Snug Harbor, then I'm here. I'm gonna play as much as I can with you tonight. So
Wow.
he just chuckled and he was very gracious to allow me to be there. And it was just fantastic to be able to spend that last time with him on the bandstand. It would be
Wow.
the last time that I actually had to play with Ellis Marsalis.
What a blessing. What a blessing. And rest in peace, Ellis. Tell us about some of the songs that you played last night, because it was a phenomenal show at SF Jazz Center.
Well, Jazz at Lincoln Center, our repertoire is very, very broad. It covers the history of jazz. Our mantra is that all jazz is modern. And we play everything from the beginning of jazz all the way to what is being written in our band to date.
Mhm.
So last night, if I remember precisely what we played two pieces by Wynton. One was Boss Song and
I-
Mendoza's The Swing. And then we played, oh wow, you kind of got me now. I don't remember everything. I wonder if we played, I
you
don't think
played,
we played the Freedom Suite.
yeah, you played Chicoria Tones for
For
Joan
Jones
Bones,
Bones, yeah.
and you
Yeah.
played Brilliant Corners,
Thelonious Monk, absolutely. We ended with the
arranged.
caboose of the big train.
Yes.
I love
What?
that.
Repeat the title.
The caboose of the big train. That was the
Yeah.
final song, the caboose.
That was awesome.
That was awesome, and the aesthetic, of course, is Railroad.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow.
Like Duke Ellington, Wynton is a great lover of trains, and the great scholar Albert Murray used to always talk about the onomatopoeia of the train, and how jazz has that inside of its sound of Duke Ellington's music, and Wynton carries that in a lot of his music. So Big Train, it's a special piece also because when Wynton wrote that piece, I actually was the music copyist for it, and we were on a 6-week tour, 3 in the U.S. and 3 in Asia. And it was the first time I had worked as a copyist for Wynton. But it was interesting because he wrote so much music in such a short period of time. It was very challenging to keep up with him in terms of copying or preparing the music for the band. But we managed to get it together. And for me, it was extraordinary because it allowed me to have an insight into a very short but very brief insight to how he writes and what's happening in the music in real time.
Mhm.
So as a
Wow.
composer,
So, in layman's terms, what is a copyist?
A copyist is the person, well, they call it music preparation, really.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
a music prep person is the one who will take the score of the composers, which might be in a reduced type of format or in some kind of, it could be any kind of code that the composer writes in. However, they usually write condensed scores on their own score pads and whatnot. And then the music prep or copyist will take the music and write out all of the individual parts for the people in the band.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
it's an intense job. We have our own copying music prep department at Jazz at Lincoln Center. We're very privileged by that. They're fantastic. They're very, very dedicated to us and what we do, and we're very appreciative of Christy English and Kay Wolf for making sure that our things are in order at all times. Not only Wynton's music, but to every member in the band, because they are responsible to make sure all of the arrangements that we write are put in a format that the band can play them. And then they archive it at the same time. So they serve the role as archivists as well. And we have all of this music at Jazz at Lincoln Center. So in our travels, Wynton puts together a list of about 100 selections. Sometimes he'll contact the band, or he'll have his team contact the band in this case and said, I'd like everybody to pick out 5 selections that they want to play. It could be your music or somebody else's. So we all picked out our 5 selections and we sent it in. And he took those selections along with some that he thought would be very, very important for us to play on the road. And that became our book for the tour. And I know for this one, he was very adamant about the fact that we wanted to take out things that really represented the band strongly. Because for one, the last concert we did, or last tour we did, was a holiday concert tour. So on the East Coast. And for that concert, it was more audience appealing type of music we were doing. So we were very, very restricted in what we did along the way because we played holiday music. But prior to that, we hadn't really played publicly in the United States as a band. You have to remember for 2 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
in
During
the
lockdown. Yeah.
yeah, in the true form of Wynton, he wanted to make a statement. He said,
Mm-hmm.
I want people to know that we still out here, we still very, very active, and we still playing." And so he took the things that represented the most diverse and most um, informed and how can I say it? You used the word earlier, sophisticated aspects of what our
Yeah.
orchestra represents. And he wanted that to be on display for the audience to see and to see the broad palette of music that we deal with. We're not just the basic colors of life. We have a
Right.
very broad spectrum of music that we deal with, from the most consonant to the most abstract along
Mm-hmm.
the way.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about the orchestra, because this show actually takes you to other places. You go to Morocco, you
Hmm.
go to Alabama, you go to New Orleans. I mean, it's just a journey.
Yeah, our music, we try to take people on
White
that
trade.
journey.
Excuse me?
Yeah. We try to take people on a journey, and we try to take people on a journey that they see, because sometimes, very rarely do we do it, but sometimes we'll have a program laid out in front of us. But as a
Uh,
musical director, it's Wynton's responsibility and his job to see that that journey meets the palate or the taste of the audience many times.
uh,
And
uh-huh.
we don't play down to an audience. We play up to them, and we try to lift people up to where we're trying to go at. So
Mhm.
on occasion, we'll change the repertoire in the middle of a show, but on most occasions, what we pick will be more than sufficient for an evening.
Right. And that's why when I was 19 years old, instead of being at a Prince concert, I was at Trapper's nightclub in Honolulu watching a young man with a trumpet and suspenders and big owl glasses. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, this man is sophisticated. He is so elegant. But then he started talking though, and he had an accent. I said, oh, he talks regular like us. I said, but I thought he would think it, oh, and Shakespeare and Harvard. And then, he was just like us. He was very down to earth. And then he would play Monopoly with us and basketball with us.
Mhm.
And we're thinking, wow. So he's the best of both worlds up there, but with us.
Yeah, because he can speak Shakespeare with you, and he can speak
Yeah.
about physics with you, and he can think about various other topics with you, if that's where the dialogue takes you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be by choice. It could be by somebody else's demand or command. And then if you take him that way, he'll talk with you about that at the time. But
Mm-hmm.
even when he talks in those particular terms, he likes to do it in a down home kind of way. That he's
Mm-hmm.
always about down home, because down home represents the blues, and he always
Mm-hmm.
wants the blues to be a part of his music and a part of his life. Not he doesn't have to want it. It is a part of his life and a part of his music. So the
Uh-huh.
blues is always present, and when we play in our world, his particular thought is as it pertains to the blues, and when we're teaching, he says the blues is like a vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
We're dealing with COVID right now, so
right.
everybody can certainly relate to this. The way we're solving some of the problems of COVID is they have a vaccine shot. So what you do is, if you have the blues, you take the blues to get rid of the blues. You
Oh,
have
okay.
COVID,
Okay.
you take COVID to get rid of COVID. So
Wow.
that's why the blues is so important in music, because John Lewis would also say, in order for a music to be jazz, it has to have three components: the suggestion of swing, syncopation, and the blues. And the blues is
Mm-hmm.
very, 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 very important to what takes place in jazz music. And if the listener is very, very intent in listening to what the music is telling them, they will hear the blues inside of it, or maybe they will hear the absence of the blues and
Mm-hmm.
realize why something may not be considered jazz. And that's not qualifying the good and the bad of it. That's just identifying the left side and the right side of it, the jazz and the not so jazz about
Mm-hmm. Wow. And for those who don't know, Mr. Goines is also a professor, an accomplished teacher of music. Where can we find you teaching these days?
I'm at Northwestern University. This is my 14th, going to my 15th year there. And it's been a
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I've been there some time now. I live on the south side of Chicago. That's why I exist most of the time. I'm always in New York with Jazz and Lincoln Center. I still have my roots in New Orleans, so there's a lot of moving around.
Bi-coastal. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And you've also taught at Juilliard?
I started the jazz studies program there in 2000, and I left there in 2007. I've
Wow.
also taught at Loyola University in New Orleans and the University of New Orleans. I taught there with Ellis Marsalis, and I've taught at Florida A&M University as well.
That's awesome. Speaking of vaccines, what's it like touring again in the age of COVID? You know, all of y'all had your mask on, even the maestro. No one
Hmm.
took theirs off, which was awesome. You have to be fully vaxxed to get into SF jazz
Hmm.
and
You have
as
to
an
be
audience.
fully, yeah, you have to be fully vaccinated to get most places in the United States, and it takes a certain common sense and discipline at the present time to put your mask on, to make sure that you're not only protecting yourself but the people around you. And if for some reason a person think they don't need protection, then put your mask on and protect the person next to you. If you
Right,
want to protect them from you, then protect yourself from them. You think about
right,
however you want to get it done. But it's also interesting to me because having traveled the world and seen different parts of Asia and all, the Japanese, the Chinese, they've been wearing masks a very long time.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
they were.
and so it's new to us in the United States, but it's not new to them. And it had just become a reality of the world now that we're wearing masks. And hopefully we can get back to a normal where people don't have to wear masks all the time, because it's great to see a smile. You can't see smiles inside of the eyes of people most times. Some people you
Right, right.
can.
You can, you can, and we women with miss showing off our lipstick. So yeah,
Right. So there's nothing more interested in when somebody comes to me and say, "Hey, Victor, how you doing?" I'm like, I can't see you. The mask is on. Then they'll point. I
right,
say,
right.
"Oh, hey, how you doing?" Then I
Oh,
can recognize the person. But I generally I can't find people with the mask on. So I look forward to a time when we can take these masks off and identify who we're talking to.
we should have a New Orleans unmasked ball where everyone shows their face.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
and now I know you got to go. You have to get on stage in a few minutes, but tell us what you're working on now and where we can hear your music.
Well, I'm working on I'm doing a fair amount of writing inside of all of this playing that I still love to do and hope to can do to do for a considerable longer time. But I'm working on a clarinet concerto for a former teacher of mine. He's retiring this year from Northwestern. So over the years, he's constantly asked me to write a piece for him. But now that he's going to retire, I said, okay, look, I commit. I'm going to do it. So I'm writing it for him, and it'll get to him pretty soon. And I'm going to try to finish it while we're on this tour.
Uh,
Then the next thing is I have a suite that I'm working on for Woodlawn Cemetery in New York.
oh
And
wow.
Woodlawn Cemetery is the resting place of Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, Cecily Tyson, Eleanor
Oh
Jacquet,
my.
all the great masters in jazz. Many of them live there, and people who are not in jazz. Colin Powell's family lives there, rests there. Um, but it's a phenomenal place, and I actually I have a place there. It's kind of
Oh,
awkward to
you
say because
do
people don't like
a
to hear
condo.
that. Yeah,
You have a condo.
I have a condo there, and that's a funny
Oh,
story. I don't know how long we have, but anyway, so
yeah, yeah.
I'm writing a suite for that. It's going to be a 12 movement suite. I've done three. Madam C.J. Walker is there. Um, the leader of
Wow.
the Red Caps are there. A lot of African Americans from the Harlem Renaissance period are buried there. Just phenomenal place. But in 2005 or so, as I was in New York, I was working over there quite a bit, doing concerts and things like that. And a young lady named Susan Olson, um, she had me come over and play a memorial service for Illinois Jacquet, because I was
Uh-huh.
close to the family. I had given him an honorary doctorate during my time at Juilliard. And so, as a joke, I think it was at first. It was a joke to me. I don't know if it was a joke to her. She said, "You should buy a place at Woodlawn Cemetery." I
Oh
said,
yeah.
"Get out of here,
Oh
Susan. I'm only in my 40s. I'm not thinking in that
yeah.
direction." So she said, "Look, just get it. Think about it as real estate. I like to consider myself an investor, even though I'm a mild investor." I said, "Okay." So I bought the place at Woodlawn, and it's right cat a corner left of Illinois Jacquet. It's across the street from Duke Ellington. It's across the street from Miles. Like I said, this is a very hot spot. Maybe one day I'll get in the band. I hope.
But I don't look forward to
I'm
visiting you there.
not
But I'm glad
soon.
you did.
Not
Not
soon.
soon. Not soon.
So,
But yeah, that is a fascinating story.
but yeah.
That story was delightful. Thank you. And Denise, my colleague Denise from City Flight Magazine would like to ask you one final question
Please,
before we.
please.
Okay.
No,
Right.
I
No,
knew
no,
you were
yeah,
supposed
no,
to do
you,
all
I-
of the questions. I just wanted to ask, how young were you when you started playing in the lines and stuff and marching and all that good stuff in Louisiana? What age did you
Wow.
start out?
Well, I started playing clarinet when I was 8 years old. I've always had
Okay.
an intrigue and interested. I was always intriguingly interested in how instruments work. You know, even before I could afford to get saxophone or flute or my brother played trumpet, so I had access to that a little bit whenever he let me touch it. So, but I always wanted to know how they function. So I was always looking at and studying the technical parts of it along the way. By the time I was 13, you know, my high school had a popular marching band. We called it the Marching 100. So I did a lot of that. And then as I was kind of hanging out and checking out different places, there was a great musician from Detroit named Willie Metcalf. He was in the movie Ray. He actually acted as Ray Charles's teacher in the movie.
Oh, oh
Oh,
my. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
wow.
And Willie Metcalf had a little kind of seminar that took place on Wednesday nights at the Y on Dryas in New Orleans. And I would go up there and Wynton and Branford would be there, down at Harrison, Terrence Blanchard, everybody who was of my generation trying to learn how to play. We were all hanging around those places. And we all ended up in bands like another one named um, Sid. I can't remember his last name right now. It'll come to me. But he had a big band, and we never really worked a lot. You know, he used to practice every week, but it seemed like we never had a gig. But we were always together. So
Wow.
all of those experiences really come together. And I just remember when I was in college, I would always end up. I went to Loyola University, which is in the uptown area of New Orleans, and Ellis Marsalis played at a place called Tyler's Beer Garden on Wednesday nights, and I would always end up there checking him out. And once Wynton was in town from his many performances with Herbie and Art Blakey and doing the concertizing classical music, and we were hanging out. And I asked him, I said, "Hey man, what do I need to do to get to this next level? I need to get to this next level." He said, "Man, try to take some lessons with my dad." So I contacted Ellis Marsalis. I said, "Hey, can I get some lessons with you?" And he was very, very generous and allowed me to take lessons with him for a very insufficient fund because I didn't have no money back then.
What
So
a
it wasn't
blessing.
about the money, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so he started teaching me, and I would show up at his gigs at Tyler's. And Tyler's was in a part of New Orleans where, if you wasn't from there, you probably shouldn't be in there.
Uh-oh.
No,
But
okay.
I didn't let that stop me. So I would go there many times. I would stay in that area after classes ended at 5 to go to his gig at 8 o'clock, not knowing how I was going to get home at the end of the time, at the end of the night. Sometimes I would catch the bus home, which was crazy. In hindsight, it was really crazy. And other times I would course friends to go there and you know, some friends of mine who would like to go drink and have raw oysters at a club. I said, man, let's go do that. And we'll go over there and they would drink and have raw oysters, but my focus was about that music. So, you know, I just kind of used people as I could to make things work in the most positive of ways. I don't mean use it negatively. And so after a while, Ellis Marsalis asked me to play in this band. So from that point on, it kind of came a constant educational component with him. And I
Wow.
That's a
asked questions.
beautiful
I was
journey.
not shy. You know,
That is
so
really a beautiful journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great. Now I'm still a student of the music. I'm working on a Ph.D. at Boston University right now.
Oh, wow,
Oh,
beautiful.
Yeah, so you know, I get a little tired sometimes. I've been working on it for about 3.5 years now. I finished all the classes. I have to just do my lit review and then write my dissertation. My dissertation is going to be on the inequities that women have faced in music.
yes,
There you go.
yes.
Finally, about
Awesome,
women,
awesome. I
really,
was just telling Denise how ignored and how
females.
dismissed. Let me tell my story, how ignored and dismissed that I felt last night. We were standing there trying to greet you guys, and some idiot tells us to move, kept telling us to move. And then we were trying to take pictures with the maestro. Her camera battery died, and he decided that I've known him since I was 19.
Uh-huh.
I'm introducing him to her. We just want a picture. And he's telling us that we've taken enough pictures and we have to move along.
Mhm.
For if we had not been female, I wondered if we would have been treated as such. and this is a jazz concert. So in the jazz world, a lot of time, and when I tried to log on to the seminars, Jazz and Lincoln Center over the pandemic, you had some seminars and people were raising their hands. No one responded when I raised my hand.
You know, the people are, Bugs Bunny used to always say, people are such interesting monsters.
Right.
But sometimes their ignorance is getting in the way of great things happening. You know, I had so many people say so many things. I had a young lady once, though, not to speak about it from an ignorance point of view, but she was saying, she said, I'm really working hard for them not to eliminate me from the legacy of whatever was taking place. I said, oh, they can't eliminate you. They might ignore it, but they can't eliminate you. Here now, you've put your stuff down.
Right.
There's nothing they can do. They might decide not to highlight it. They may decide not to talk about it, but it's here. And if you continue to just keep doing it, one day somebody's going to come and stumble upon it and say, what is this about over here? And that's kind of been the way I've approached my career. You know, everybody didn't have the privilege of a record contract with Columbia Records.
Yes.
They did not have the privilege of playing the great concert halls around the world. Right. But everybody does have the responsibility to invest in their own careers. So I saw Ellis Marsalis record his own records. So I recorded my own records. I saw him invest in himself, so I invested in myself. And I always said that one day when I close my eyes, I want to make sure that I'm in some of the textbooks that are talking about jazz so that I can't be overlooked. There have been so many great musicians in the history of jazz music that no one knows about. The teachers of the teachers, the teachers of the great musicians, other musicians who were in the bands of some people who were recognized, but maybe were not identified or highlighted through the media or whatnot. And I didn't want that to be my story. I said, I'm going to just keep doing it. As Clark Cherry would say, keep on keeping on until I get enough information out there. I will not be denied. That was my talk about it. And all of the situations I've dealt with, being a male is only part of what I represent being up in here, not to go into the whole racial inequity situations of America and mankind. We can get into a very long conversation. But prejudices have been what they are. And, you know, I've dealt with a lot of racist situations in my life. And when I run into them, instead of being defeated by them, I turn it into energy, into fuel. I say, if you say I can't do something, then I'm going to show you I can. If you say I'm excluded from it, I'm going to let you see me on the inside. You're not going to stop me. I mean, I had teachers in college and things like that who were racist and all of that kind of stuff who did all they could to not allow me to rise to the top. But cream always rises to the top of milk.
Right.
And I wasn't going to let them stop me from rising. How high I rose, that's a different discussion. It doesn't matter. But I did rise, and I will continue to rise. I will not let anyone stop. So for anyone who watches this or listens to this interview, I would say, don't let them stop you. Don't worry about if it's being recognized in this time period, because prophets are never recognized in their own hometown or in their time. They're recognized after the fact, most of them. And you just have to keep on going at it until the time comes that is your time to be recognized. And you will be recognized. You cannot be ignored. It just takes the right person to come upon, research, and find this one diamond in the rough that's going to actually help solve some of the problems that's existing in the world. So that's my thing on it. We're going into much more of a diatribe about it.
and you keep being that diamond, Victor. You are a gem. And thank you. And on behalf of Streetwise Radio, and thank you, Victor, Wynton, Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, and SF Jazz. I think I mentioned. Anyway, thank you, everybody. And thank you, most of all, Victor, for giving up your time. I know you got to go and play a gig now.
Yeah, well, so, I want to thank Streetwise for having us, because, you know, we do what we do, but you bring it to the people to hear it and know what we do. And that's really important. This works hand in glove. So thank you very much for having me, my colleagues, and fighting the fight that you have to fight sometimes just to get to us to celebrate what we've done. We really appreciate you.
Awesome. And we'll see you. And I'm going to read that dissertation.
I got to get it done. It's not there yet, but it's coming.
All right. Have a great night, Victor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.